Okay, so when you're a beginner and you starting your pattern, you don't know a lot of the sort of markings on a pattern. Some of the pattern pieces are just straightforward, apart from these arrows, which we've explained before. When we lay them out on the fabric, we're making sure we have it parallel to the selvage, which is the woven edge. So let's get rid of that piece. Let's have a look at this piece again. The only important marking on here was to place it on the fold, because that's going to be our neckline, and to make sure we cut one on the fold in fabric and one on the fold of the interfacing, which we've done. Do read the seam allowance on there. It says using 1.5 seam allowance at neckline, even though it gives you 1.5 seam allowance included. We'll come to that bridge. Cross that bridge when we get to it. So we've got another one there, which is having the fabric, the pattern piece on the fold, so that when we open it up, it becomes our neck. Let's show you there. So just like the front piece, this is going to be the facing for the back. Can you open it? So that's going to be the back collar there, on the back neck. So let's just pin that back together. There's nothing to mark there. You just get to press the interfacing to it. So we have the glue side. Remember we said we're going to use the iron-on stuff. So I don't know if you can see it's shiny, and it's not shiny. The shiny side has the glue. So make sure you put it on the wrong side of the fabric, so that when it's sewn on and turned the right way, inside the dress, you will see this pretty side of your fabric. Okay, so let's just pin that together. Don't take the pins, separate the patterns from the fabric, pattern pieces from the fabric pieces just yet. Here is the sleeve. Now we've got only on here, the only markings we've got on here is hem turn up, which is a top stitch in place. It doesn't say on here how much to turn it up just yet. It does say 1.5 seam allowance included, but use a 1 centimetre seam allowance at the armhole. So at the armhole we're going to just use 1 centimetre seam allowance, but on the sides we're using 1.5 centimetres. It does get confusing when they change using different seam allowances throughout the pattern, but don't worry about that. Okay, on here is the placement markings for your pocket to match your fabric pieces together and whatnot. So we'll work on one piece at a time. We'll work on this one because it's facing upwards. So this is going to be the front dress here. So we look for the markings here that we have notches, and on these notches, they're just V's, they're triangles. Ideally what I should have done was cut outwards a V, but I'm going to snip one inwards. So just grab a pair of snippers, as I like to call them, and let's cut away. So we're going to cut into the seam allowance, but only a small triangle. And carry on doing it for all our notches. Then we've got our pocket placement. We need to know where we're going to put our pocket for our hands. So this is a different marking mechanism. It's wax paper, so you fold it over, so you've got wax on the front and on the back. Stick it between the fabric on the wrong sides. Now my wrong sides were outwards, so I'm going to put the wax inwards like that. Show you better. So we've got the wax like this, and put the wax on the wrong side at the bottom, and I'm going to fold it inwards on top of the wrong side of the fabric there, so it's sort of sandwiching my fabric. I'll look at the dot of where the fabric opening is. I'm just going to go over the dot with a cross like that. I'll just slide it over there and put a mark there. Press really hard. Sometimes the wax doesn't show. and I can see there markings. Just make sure I can see it there, and I can see it there. So yesterday I had it all cut out and marked, and then suddenly after I'd marked it, I realised that the pocket that I'd cut out, I'd only cut out one piece. So it's one set of pattern pieces, which means I'll only have one pocket. Now, going through what I have left from my pattern, my fabric, I didn't have quite enough because of my positioning. I didn't take it into consideration. Had I done, I would have found plenty of space because I've got lots of large pieces. But I'd cut some of the pieces up to make little bows for a different dress actually. And what I didn't do was take into consideration the need for the second set of pockets. So what I'm going to do is just chuck those pieces out of the way, and I'm going to take you over here because in my stash I do have a roll of this fabric from IKEA, which I use for lining in my workshops, and it's the Bomul, if that's pronounced correctly, and it's used in the bags workshops and all sorts of lining workshops that we use, so and samples if we're doing stitches. So what will happen if I cut two pieces out of this one is one of the pockets pieces will be in the check and one of the pocket pieces will be in the lining, and I've seen that quite often in tailoring. So the back piece will be that and the front piece of the pocket will be in this cream lining. So if I mark that on, and what I can do is just pin it on. So remember what we've got to do here is just measure from selvage, making sure, and I can do it right on the edge actually. We put our pattern pieces on the edge and make sure both layers are together on selvage. 2.5 there, and 2.5 there. Okay. And that gives us a straighter grain pattern piece along these threads that are on the loom when the weft thread is threaded that way. And what it just really means is when you cut your pattern piece out, you will get a nice straight weave along this piece, and it won't skew when you wash it, when you iron it, and it will stay and remain in a good sturdy position. Okay, so I'm going to cut that piece out. Now, because I cut the pattern before with scissors, it's not so smooth. So I'm going over those woven bits that aren't very neat and cut as well. I do like using a rotary cutter, but you must take care and keep your fingers out of the way. I've been doing this for a long time. A long time. Don't want to say how long. So that's now given me 4 pieces of pocket. I'll show you what I mean. If I take these away, so what I do is they'll be the front pieces for the pattern and they'll be the back pieces like that. The pocket doesn't have any black markings on it, the dots. So even though I would sit the pocket there, that could be confusing again to a beginner. All you do is just move it along. Now it tells you on the pattern piece that you're going to have a 1.5 seam allowance. It does say overlock the pockets around the edges using a seam allowance. If you haven't got an overlocker, again, you'd probably get yourself in a tiz about that. Overlock, all it means is just neaten the edge. So as a simple zigzag around the edge would be fine. But when we get to the sewing of this pocket, I'll show you what it means. So it doesn't have to sit there, it will actually move right over to the end of the fabric. Try and fold this. This notch here is the end of the pocket, and that's of the end of the pocket opening, and that's the other end of the opening, and the black dots should really be matching to this here, and it's not. And I suppose what's happening is it's just telling me when I sew the pattern I will probably have to sew the side pieces all the way up to there, and then the other side piece up to there.